So today we are going to be looking at an aspect. We're going to be looking at data visualization with Power Apps. As you may know, Power Apps, there are two types of Power Apps. We have the model-driven apps and we have the Canvas apps. So we are going to explore the possibilities when it comes to data visualization in these two types of Power Apps. And we're going to look into the Canvas apps also, and we're going to see some functions that really help you to be able to craft your visualization and help you get more out of what has been provided. So as is our usual culture, we are going to start by going through some three riddles, and this is just to stimulate our brain and take away, just relieve us of a little stress of the day. So we're just going to have it for 5 seconds. Post your answer in the chat window, and Chisom is going to help us by reading it out. So let's begin. So this is our first brain teaser. There are 5 sisters in the room. Anne is reading a book. Margaret is cooking. Kate is playing chess. Mary is doing laundry. What is the 5th sister doing? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Chisom, is there any answer in the chat window?
Let me check, but I don't think so.
Okay. So let's have that in the back of our mind. Then the next brain teaser.
Okay, someone said playing chess.
Okay,
Emmanuel Oladiri said playing chess. Mercy says nothing.
Okay, so the answer is actually playing chess, because
nice.
This Kate is playing chess. So the 5th sister is actually playing chess with Kate, because Kate is not playing chess with herself.
Okay.
So that's the answer to that. Then the next one, I'm an odd number, but take away a letter and I become even. What am I? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So post the answer in the chat window. I'm an odd number, but take away a letter and I become even. What am I? Then the last brain teaser, which glass will fill first? So I await the answers.
Okay.
Okay. So in order for us not to waste time, the answer to this is 7. So it says I'm an odd number, but take away a letter and I become even. So 7, if we have an S at the front of.
Oh, okay.
Time we take away, we have even. And the last one, so if you trace it, you actually
we
see
have we have people giving their own suggestions.
Okay.
Victoria said glass 4.
Okay.
Madam J said number 3. Ndifreke said number 2. Emmanuel said number 3. So I think I'll also go with.
Okay, but really, if you look at it well, you see that none of the glasses are actually going to be filled. So if you look at number 3, you see there's a stoppage here. Number 1, there's a stoppage here. Number 2, there's a stoppage here. So if you trace through all of them, you actually see that none of the glasses are going to be filled. So thank you. We all did wonderful. So my name is Kadi Ajayi. I'm a Power Platform Azure and Azure AI developer with Ha-Shem. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer on Power Platform. I'm a lover of mixed reality, virtual reality, game development, and 3D animation. And here are the links to my profile online. You can actually follow me. Okay, so going straight into the business of the day. We have just 3 items in our agenda. So we're going to start by talking about the visualization options in Power Apps. So as I said earlier, we're going to look at model-driven apps, the visualization options present, and we are going to look at CanvasApps, and we'll see the visualization options present there. Then we are going to spend more time on the Canvas apps. Then we'll look at useful functions and tricks that we can actually use to get more of the default visualization, because if you look at the visualization options in CanvasApps, as we're going to see, they are more limited than the other platforms. So, but there are still things you can do to just get more, and you can actually have an advantage by using CanvasApps. Then the third item in our agenda is we're just going to go into Power Apps portal, and we'll actually see how data visualization works. So let's just go straight into it. So Power Apps enables digital transformation. We've seen how Power Apps allows efficient and easy ways to collect, store, and process your organization data. So as I said earlier, with Power Apps, you can take away a lot of the redundancy of manual processes, and you can actually begin to automate them. You can actually have a app that takes away the paperwork, and it's accessible everywhere. If we're talking about using things like forms, you need a pen, you will need to have the form with you. But with Power Apps, you can actually access it from your devices, from your various devices. You can access it from your phone, you can access it from your system, from your tablet. And we get those advantages when it comes to collecting data, when it comes to storing data, when it comes to processing data. And Power Apps allows organizations to do more with data rather than just keeping them archived. So now this is something that we see in many organizations. They have this big cupboard where they store a lot of paperwork, where they store a lot of files, and there's this challenge of retrieving data when you need it. You have to probably go through the dust and all of those things just to get the actual data you need. And those are the processes that Power Apps really helps us to be able to do away with, because we can actually have our data on demand rather than just keeping them archived. We can actually do more with it. We can actually use our data to fuel AI predictions. We can actually use our data. We can add more power to our data, sort of. So because now our salespeople are not just they're not just working blindly. They're actually working with data insight, and this is one of the things that Power Apps brings to the table. Then finally, I have here that Power Apps provides different visualization options to make meaning out of your data through an holistic view. So if you are to do like a comparison between using Power Apps and your classic file storing and retrieval, you will see that with Power Apps, you are able to have an holistic view of your data. So, and that's really what visualization is all about. Being able to summarize and interpret your data in a way that it makes meaning to the viewer. So, and that's what we're actually going to look at. So when you're talking about visualizations, you'll be looking at things like charts, dashboards, and we'll see the possibilities within Power Apps. So, but first off, let's just talk more about CanvasApps versus ModelDriven Apps. So what is the difference between these two types of Power Apps? So CanvasApps present the app maker with a visual canvas and allows full control over the UI and functionality of the application. So similar to the way a painter starts with an empty page, so that's how you start with the Canvas app, and you have full control of the pixels, you have full control of the positioning of items, you have full control of the colors and all of those things. You can actually program what each component does, and you have that flexibility with Canvas apps. But model-driven apps, on the other side, it provides another level of app creation. So because model-driven apps present the app maker with pre-made components that allows users to interact with the required data. So if you look at the name model-driven, it's driven by the way you model your data. So the relationships that you create within your data. If you're creating a model-driven app, you spend more time on your data architecture than on the app UI, really, because the UI is actually automatically generated based on the data. So in some cases, model-driven apps is actually the go-to solution, because you actually have speed, right? You have speed because you don't have to control how every single screen looks in the front. You don't need to pixel precise. You just need to describe your data and an app will be generated. So in some cases, model-driven apps and is the right way to go. So it's usually about what you want, then the way the users get to use your application. That's really what determines which of the apps you're going to go for, whether you go for CanvasApps or model-driven apps, but they are both powerful tools within the Power Apps environment. So now, data visualization in model-driven apps. There are two concepts of data visualization in model-driven apps, and they are related. We have visualizations and we have dashboards. So when we're talking about visualizations, they allow you to present your data in form of charts. So really, when I say visualizations, what I'm really talking about is charts. So there are different charts, and the charts here, they support drill down operations. Then they can be customized with code. Okay, so for example, there's a way the charts are by default, but you can actually get it to look differently just by exporting it and changing some XML code. So it's really nothing complex, and with that you can actually have customized charts within your model-driven app. Then we have various chart types. We have the column chart, we have the stacked column chart, 100% stacked column chart. We have the pie chart, the line chart, combined chart. That's really plotting two different kind of charts on the same canvas, sort of. So that's what we call a combined chart. And we have funnel chart, and there are still some more which we'll just have a glimpse of when we are doing the demo. Then the idea of dashboards act as a business intelligence tool in model-driven apps. So remember we said that visualizations allow you to have an holistic view of your data. So dashboards really take that to another level. Dashboard, it gives you a snapshot of your data in various forms. So you can use dashboards to simultaneously present data from up to 6 charts. So rather than just looking at a single chart, by the time you bring all of these charts together on a single view, or you can say on a single canvas, then you are looking at a dashboard. So a dashboard is just a way of you getting your information, just like an overview of things going on within your department or within your organization, just through a single view. So for example, in an organization, in a model-driven app, the aspects where the sales department, where they interface, the dashboard there could be different from what the IT department interfaces with, because the departments both have different goals. So they will actually be looking at the data that is more aligned to their goals. So with dashboards, you can pull from a common set of visualizations. So now this is where the relationship comes in. So you start by creating charts, right? So that's the visualization aspect. So at the end of the day, what you have is you have a pool of charts. So from that pool of charts, you can now begin to build dashboards for the people that need it. So for example, the head of sales, you will need to have a view. You can build a dashboard for the head of sales. You can build a dashboard for the members of the sales department, and you can begin to segregate the information based on who is viewing it and based on what they need to know. So we really have that functionality with dashboards in model-driven apps. Then you can also embed Power BI dashboard. So I'm sure when we saw the name data visualizations, one of the first things that came to our mind is Power BI. Yes, because that's the strength of Power BI. And you can actually bring that strength of Power BI into your model-driven apps by embedding a Power BI dashboard. So a lot of times it depends on what you want to achieve. That's what determines the tools that you use. So this is an example of how a model-driven app dashboard looks. So you can see we have different charts. So now this is a donut chart. You can see that this is another kind of chart we're going to see. This is a bar chart. This is a pie chart. Then we can actually see some count of some values. So we can see that. Then we can actually see some actual data. So now this interface, if you've worked with Dynamics, you see it has a very similar look. So because there's a tight integration in form of architecture when you're comparing model-driven apps and Dynamics. Okay, so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about dashboards in model-driven apps. So now let's just move into the Canvas app aspect of things. So in Canvas apps, what we have charts. And the chart allows you to have an holistic view of your data. So you can actually have a data source, as we are going to see later. You have a data source, and by crafting your functions, you are able to group them. You are able to add more. You're able to enrich your data. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times in organizations we have flat data. Our data is in a flat file. So it now takes a form of enrichment for you to be able to present it in a form of a visual. And we'll see how we can use functions to make that possible later on. So then you can also embed your Power BI dashboard in your Canvas app. So, and there are actually two modes. So there's a mode whereby you just have the dashboard embedded in a way that you can't really interact with it. And there's also another mode where you can actually have the full interaction that you get on your Power BI dashboard. You can actually have that full interaction within your Canvas app. So, and this is an example of the way the chart looks in Canvas app. Well, you might be looking at this doesn't look so fancy, but by the time we look into how we can actually make them work, you will get to see how you can actually make it work for you. So, and so once you embed the Power BI, this is just a screenshot of like an example of how it can look. So you are embedding the Power BI dashboard in your application. So whether you're embedding it in your ModelDriven app or in your Canvas app, you have access to the visuals. So we know, or we may know that Power BI has much more visuals and capabilities when it comes to visualization than Power Apps. So you can actually connect to that possibility. You can connect to that functionality by embedding your Power BI dashboard within your Canvas app or your ModelDriven app. So just to talk a little bit about the functions we'll be looking at in the Canvas app. First of all, we'll be looking at the table function. So the table function, it allows you to create a table. So, and you know, when we are talking about a table, we are talking about rows and columns. So in the table function, we have this opening curly brace and the closing curly brace. That actually refers to a row. Then where we see this value before the column, that's actually referring to a column. So we'll see this in action when we get into the demo. Then we have the group by function. Now the group by function is very useful when you are trying to work on things like visuals in Canvas apps. So because the group by function allows you to group similar data. So we'll see how that works within the application. So you're just going to you're going to choose the column which you want to group by. Then it's going to perform a group by based on that column. So it's going to group by the similar values in that column. Then we have the add column functions. So when I say enrich your data, so sometimes you have your data, but it's just flat and it's in a raw form. So in order for you to be able to do more with your data, sometimes you need to enrich it. You will need to add some columns, you will need to write some functions, you will need to do some calculations. So the add columns function really makes that easy, and it really allows you to take a very simple data and expand it to be able to answer the questions that you want to be answered. So for example, in your data source, you have different tables. You can actually do lookups, you can actually do calculations just to ensure that you have a single table that can actually answer the questions that you want answered by your visualizations. So at this point, we're just going to go into the demo. Let us have a view of how first off we can create charts in model-driven apps, then how we can actually work with Canvas apps and get functionalities in form of our charts in Canvas apps. So let's just go right into it. So over here, so first off, let's just quickly talk about the model-driven apps side of things. So when we're talking about model-driven apps, you need Dataverse. So the default and primary data source for model-driven apps is Dataverse, formerly called CDS. So, and when you get to your make.powerapps.com, so this is the maker portal. Once you get here, you can come to data, you can come to tables. So as I said earlier, what you really spend a lot of time on is not in architecting your UI, but is in architecting your data. So for example, if you want to have a chart, you have to come to your table, you have to come to your data, and you get to pull out the chart that you want. So for example, if we look at this account and this account table, we can select this account table, and once we do that, we get to see the metadata that is related to this table. So we can see, so these are columns, as you can see on this heading. So once you click on a table has columns. So these are columns that are present within this account table. So, and so you can build your visualizations based on these columns. So, and for you to be able to do that, you remember I said that you start by creating charts. So you come over here to your charts, right? So these are some charts that have been created by default. So first off, we can just open it and let's see what is there. So really, we are going to see a very key difference in working between CanvasApps and model-driven apps, because right here we'll see that we don't have to write any function, sort of. We already have an interface and we just get to choose. So automatically, because we are using CDS, we are using Dataverse as our data source, it already recognizes the data and it already recognizes the column. So it's just going to ask you to select the column. So for example, this one I selected, if we are to see the name, you can see account by industry, and what is the data is representing. So if you come over here, you see this place is category, this place is series, right? So for the series, and you can see it here, legend series. So for the series, you can see account name, right? And for the category, which is this y-axis, you can see industry. So that's really what makes it category by industry. So really, that's all about creating charts in model-driven apps. So you just come to the chart and to the chart tab, and you choose the columns you want to interact with each other, and you get to have your visual. Then you can actually select from different visual types. So from different visuals, so we have the column stacked, as I listed earlier on. So we have these possibilities: stacked bar, 100% stacked bar, area. So there are different possibilities, and you see that as I click on it, it adjusts. It gives us more like a preview of how it's going to be. So right now we can see there's no data here, so we really cannot get to see um, it in action. But it's not more than this. It's just about coming to the charts and selecting the columns that you want to interact with each other, and you already have it available within your application. So, and so just to buttress that further, let me come over here. So just to buttress that further, so this is a model-driven app. So let me just quickly open the model-driven app. So this is also in contrast to what we see when we are creating CanvasApps. This is what you see when you are creating a model-driven app. So you can see it's really about your data, then the forms view charts. So for example, okay, this solution doesn't have accounts, but for example, you get to see that once you select the charts, there will be a list of the okay, so let me just quickly, trying to be conscious of time. Okay, we're still good on time. So if we're to just okay, so we are the account entity. So now that we have the account entity here, if I come to chart, so now you can see that account by industry is already here. So if you want it, so by default it selects all the charts. Maybe you just want to see account by industry, you can just choose to select that alone. And when you get into your application, you will see you're able to access that chart. Okay, so that's really the idea of charts in model-driven apps. Then when it comes to Canvas apps, so let me quickly close this out. Then similarly to the way we edited, if you observed, we can actually create a new chart. So if I'm to quickly come back here to data, account, charts. So these are the ones that we saw just now, and you can also add a new chart, which is just still the same interface. It's just going to ask you, okay, what is the name of the charts that you want? Then what columns do you want to interact with each other? So then once you're done, you can save and close. So then coming into CanvasApps, so you can see the difference of the experience. So in CanvasApps, you really have a canvas where you can actually choose where you want each element to be. So for example, I can move things around. I can determine the exact placement of my cards, so to speak. So now what I just tried to do before now, so that we don't eat so much into the time, is just to create some kind of different scenarios or different examples of visuals that we can make possible with the Power Apps chart. So if we're to talk about the limitations first, if you come over here to charts, you see we have just a very limited options for charts. We have the column chart, line chart, pie chart, Power BI tile. So those are just the options. If you compare it to model-driven apps that we just saw, you see there are much more options in the model-driven apps. But still, with these ones, you can still represent your data as you want it to be if you just understand the functioning. So what I'm just going to do now is let's be silent on this page and let's create a new screen. So here we just quickly look into how you can get your data and how you can enrich your data. All right, so first off, so now we have a blank screen, a blank canvas, which we can actually put whatever we want to put. So first off, here's your data. We can come to view data sources. So currently I have a data source connected to the app, which is this flooring estimate. It's hosted on my OneDrive. So here it is in the OneDrive, and this is the data. So it's just a very simple data of some carpets and their types, and the price and their images. So that's just what it is. So, but if you observe in the data here, we can see carpets. So we can see there is a form of we can see a form of grouping, right? So, but once we have this flat data, we will now be able to use the functions that I talked about earlier to group them together and help us visualize our data. Okay, so what we're just going to do is, so that we can have a view of what's going on, we're going to insert a gallery. So we'll insert a gallery, and we're just going to make our data source the flooring estimate. So just like that, we already have our data here. So, but a way that I always like to view the data is by double clicking. So once you double click on this place, you have this drop down where you can actually get to see your data, just kind of similarly to the way you were able to see it in the Excel file itself. So this is what we have here, and this is the data we are going to be making use of. So let's just take this data first of all. Let me just copy it, and so let me minimize this. So let's just have our chart. Let's just bring in our column chart. Let's start with the column chart. So once you create a chart, Power Apps gives you this demo data, which you can just quickly delete if you don't need. All right, so this is the default column chart sample. It's just a sample to show you that the chart is working. So you can actually replace it with your data source. And okay, so now we've done that, we've replaced it with our data source, but this doesn't look okay. I think I can delete this. So if we're looking at this, visualization is really supposed to give us information, but this is not looking like useful information. So, but this is what came in by default from our data source. So first off, we now have to start to enrich our data so that we can get the visual that we want. So we want to be able to view it based on, so what we want is we want to be able to group them based on the category, right? So that's where we're going to start. So let's just do a group by. So, and one good thing about Power Apps is as you're typing, you get to see suggestions on things you can type. So here you can see source, column name, group name. So it's telling us we have a source. Now this is our source. So what is the column name that we need to group by? We need to group by category. So, and now you can see IntelliSense in action. So the suggestion has come up, and yes, we want to group by category. And okay, so what is the name of the group? So this group name really means now that we are grouping by category, every other thing, where should it go? So we need to have like a new column for that. So let's just call this category groups. Okay. So we're going to see something. Now this doesn't look like it's working. It's not showing us anything. And so that's part of the nuances of working with the charts here. If you are not patient or if you really don't know what's going on, it might look like it's not working fine. So what we can actually do now. So what is happening right here, as I would love to show. So let me just quickly copy this and add a button. So we'll quickly create a variable, and let me just do a set. Let me just say set data, and let me supply this. So what we are doing now, if you can see on this button, this is the on select. So we are saying when we select this button, set this variable to the value here. Okay, or let me just use collect so that we are able to view it. So collect the value here into this variable. So by the time I click on play and click on this button, okay, so let's believe it has done that already. So a way we can actually, yes.
This person I'm talking about actually is our staff, is my colleague.
Hello, okay. So a way we can actually view our collections. So if you come to the view, you can see your collections, and this is that variable that we just created. So we can see it here, data. Now you can see carpet. So we already have the group by working. So it's actually doing what we want, and we have the category groups here. So if we click on this, we can actually see all the other informations are here. But the issue we are having with our chart here right now is it can see the group, but it needs something else to be able to plot against. So now just coming into this place here. So for example, if I select here and I come into the items, so you can see after the group by, what you can now do is you can now do the add columns. So now what data do we want to represent? We want to be able to see how many items are in each group. So in other words, the data we want to represent here is category by the count, right? So we want to see, okay, for carpet, how many carpets are there? For what other things in the data? For hardwood, how many hardwoods are there? So to have that happen, let's just quickly do add columns. Okay. Then, so similarly, we can see the IntelliSense here, the suggestion. So we have source. Then now it says column, a unique column name. So it's asking us to create the name of the column. So let's just say count, right? Then after that, it's saying the expression. So this expression is what is the formula that you want to use to create this new column. So if you were doing a lookup, you would add your lookup in this aspect. If you were doing a calculation, this is where you would put it. So but for us, we're just going to do a count rows. Just going to do a count rows. Count rows category groups. So here is just going to count how many rows are in the category groups, and now we've been able to extract information from our data. So somebody viewing this chart now, you can get to see, just have that holistic view that okay, we have 6 hardwoods, we have 5 carpets, we have 5 tiles. So using that function, we are able to get this out of the data. So coming back to this page, that's really is the same data that is actually supplying all of this. So now if I'm just to play this, you will notice once I click on this, it's showing the data. It's showing the data that is present. So once I click on tile, it's showing. So these are all the tiles. Once I click on this, these are all the hardwoods. These are all the carpets. So depending on what you want to achieve, you can actually get your charts to work for you. So if you remember the charts that come by default, if you come to your inserts, we have the column charts, line charts, pie charts, Power BI tile. So, but you'll be wondering that we can actually see some more. So if you look at this one here, this one here, this one, these ones are implemented using galleries. So it's just the same thing about using your add columns, your group by, to be able to get your data, then representing it within the gallery, and you have it presented like a chart. So with that, the stacked column chart is not available by default, as you can see here. It's not available by default, but using a gallery, you can actually get a stacked column chart, and you can have your series come out there. Then over here, you remember that there's no donut chart, but this is looking like a donut chart, but it's just really a workaround. So that's what I was really saying about tricks. So this is just a white circle placed on top of a pie chart. So for example, if I move this away, you see it's just a pie chart under the hood. So but by adding that white circle on top of it, we have the illusion of a donut chart. So with those kind of workarounds, you can actually get more out of your visuals. Then okay, so you observe that this part was actually changing when I was selecting the items here. So that's just very simple. Now you can see the items that is being supplied here is this table data. So what I've just done is on the select of this gallery. So if we come to action on select, we are updating table data with the category groups present in this gallery. So, but just in the next 2 minutes, let's just talk about some things that are in the defaults that are in the chart that are presented by Power Apps. So for example, if we start with this line chart, we can see this called number of series. So for example, if I come and I change it to 1, we see that it's showing just one data. So for example, you want to be able to plot your line charts against 2 different values, you can use your series to do that. And so it depends on how your data is structured. So for example, the data we have here, if you look at what we've been able to get, so just from this basic data that we got, that came in, we are able to get the categories, we're able to get the count of the categories, we're able to get the sum of the categories. So in other words, for carpet, this is the total sum of carpet. For hardwood, this is the total sum of hardwoods. And all of this was not actually present in the provided data. So by using the functions, you can get all of those things out. So you can get to plot them against each other. Then, so we have the series. Then how do you determine what data is actually presented? You come to the advanced. Then, so you can see label series 1, series 2. So for example, if my series 2, I want my series 2 to be the category count, and I want my series 1 to be the category. So you can just get to change it from there. So automatically, Power Apps recognizes the available columns. So you can see it prefills it. So you can actually have up to 9 series side by side. So it prefills it with what it can extract from the data. Then it gives you the option to choose which one should come first, which one should come last. Then you observe there is a color theme. For you to be able to change the colors, you do that still in this advanced under this item color set. So if I'm to open it here, so you can just see we have 2 colors. So this is the first color. If I highlight it, is if I click on this, so you can see this is the first color, this bluish color that we have, and the second color, this orangish color that we have. So those are really ways you can work on visualizations with Power Apps, CanvasApps, and with model-driven apps. So I really hope you've gotten something from the session today. So at this point, I'm just going to hand over to Chisom, where she takes the questions and answer segments. Chisom, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kayode, for taking us through such an interesting session. We have now reached the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please signify by using the raised hand feature in the meeting window, and I'll call on you to ask your question. Or you can tell us in the comment section and I'll read it out to our speaker. Doesn't look like we have any questions. Okay. So we don't have any questions. Okay. Okay, we have a question from Emmanuel Oladiri, and he's asking, why do you want to build a dashboard in Power App as against Power BI? Hello? Kayode?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. Okay.
Yes, do you get that?
Yes, I got the question. So there are a number of reasons you might want to do that. So for example, once you're working within an app, you might want to have, there's some, for example, if you're using a Power BI dashboard, that means your data must be synchronized with Power BI. So sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes the data we are working with is kind of within the app. So there could now be that. So in those cases, what you might now have to do is you might have to do all of those data architecture. You might have to replicate it for Power BI also. So sometimes that's not really what you want. Then sometimes what you just really need is a simple line chart, for example. Not really a dashboard in a sense. So I think now if you look at the purpose of the dashboard in Power BI, it's quite different from the purpose of what we would call a dashboard in a Canvas app. So when we are talking about Power BI, we are really talking about sharing the dashboard. We are really talking about the dashboard being accessible across board and all of those things. But when we are talking about dashboard in Power Apps, so we are really talking about visualizing our data. So for example, our app is generating data, our app is collecting data. We want to be able to visualize it in the form of a summary. So we don't want to have to go through all the rows of the tables. So we want to have it like in the form of a summary view. So with that, you don't necessarily need to go and create a Power BI dashboard, because you are not sharing the dashboard, but the dashboard is within the app. So in such a case, you might just want to use the charts and visualization present within Power Apps to get your visualization. So I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Kayode.